Coming up on today's episode of the Salesman Podcast.
What does it mean to be brilliant? What is being brilliant? Can anybody do it? You know what? It's one of those, you have to define your own brilliance. Brilliant people tend to do things like go to the Olympics, and they tend to win medals and stuff like that, which is great. Being a brilliant dad or a brilliant mum has your own very own definition. It's not like being dad of the year. Everyone's got a mug with dad of the year on it. I want to be brilliant at this, I want to be brilliant at that, I want all these things. I want to be brilliant at everything. What do you want to be brilliant at? Everything. I would say, look, you can probably be brilliant at maybe 2 or 3 things. You can be fantastic at loads of stuff. So I think one of the first things people have to do is choose, what do you want to be brilliant at?
Hello Sales Nation, my name is Will Barron and I'm the host of the Salesman Podcast, the world's most downloaded B2B sales show. In today's episode, absolute pleasure to interview Michael Heppell. You can find him over at michaelheppell.com. And on today's episode, we get into how to become brilliant, what brilliant is, what you should become brilliant at, and the practical elements of achieving this. Everything that we talk about in this episode is available in the show notes over at salesman.org. And with that said, let's jump right into it. Michael, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Will. I'm excited about this one.
I'm excited to have you on, sir. And so today's episode, I'm going to start, I'm not trying to be lazy here with these questions, but I'm going to try and be as open-ended with them as possible, at least at the beginning of the conversation, and we can funnel it down at the end. Because we're going to talk about how to be brilliant. But I guess the first place to start is, how do we define what brilliant is? Because this means different things to different people, right?
Exactly. And you know what? It's interesting because that question comes up a lot. Well, what does it mean to be brilliant? What is being brilliant? Can anybody do it? Mm-hmm. You know what? It's one of those, you have to define your own brilliance. Now, if you're in sport, right, brilliant people tend to do things like go to the Olympics, and they tend to win medals and stuff like that, which is great. Being a brilliant dad or a brilliant mum has your own very own definition. It's not like being dad of the year. Everyone's got a mug with dad of the year on it, but you know in your heart what brilliance looks like being a dad. Brilliance in sales is very measurable because you're going to get the deals. People are going to say, yeah, we get what you're about. We understand this. We want to buy from you because you've been brilliant at building this relationship, brilliant at explaining the benefits of this product or service or whatever it might be. So sometimes it's very measurable. Other times it has to come from the heart. But you know what? You know when you're cheating it. Mm. And that's one of the real keys. It's like sometimes people say, well, I'm really good, but I'm getting poor results. Well, that's the essence of how to be brilliant. If you do a good job, expect poor results. If you do a fantastic job, expect good results. But if you do a brilliant job, expect brilliant results.
Right, so there's so much to go at here already. Just to double down on this idea of you know it in your heart, how much of that is subjective upon your life experience and your belief system? And what I mean by that, Michael, is 5 years ago, I would have said right now I'd be doing brilliant. But now, as I sit here in 2021, I feel like there's loads more opportunities that I'm not taking advantage of, and I'm not as brilliant as what I perhaps could be or should be. So how much of this is defined of just the moment in time that you capture that definition of brilliance?
Well, exactly. I mean, the other thing is that trying to be brilliant at everything is going to cause a lot of problems. Sure. So you have to choose what you want to be brilliant at. So when so classic thing, remember the old days when people used to do courses and folks used to all turn up to a hotel room and learn stuff. Well,
all that 12 months ago, that ancient period.
Yeah, those days have gone, which is fine. But one of the classic questions that people would always say is, I want to be brilliant at this, I want to be brilliant at that, I want all these things. I want to be brilliant at everything. What do you want to be brilliant at? Everything. I would say, look, you can probably be brilliant at maybe 2 or 3 things. You can be fantastic at loads of stuff. So I think one of the first things people have to do is choose, what do you want to be brilliant at? So I have 3 things I want to be brilliant at. I want to be a brilliant husband, number 1, because without my wife, I'm nothing. And I've had that situation before. We actually got divorced and then got remarried. And I know the time that we were divorced, I wasn't nearly the person that I am now. So that's number 1. Number 2, I want to be a brilliant dad. Right, so I've got 1 left. Oh, brilliant at my job. No, you can't be that vague. So I say I want to be brilliant at presenting. That's what I want to be brilliant at. But Michael, you've written 8 books. You're a best-selling author. I'm a good author. I'm not a brilliant author. Brilliant authors write all day long. That's all they do. All they do is write. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the inclination to do that. So my books aren't as good as some other people who are just authors, but I can deal with that because I'm very happy in my own skin at working hard to be a brilliant dad, a brilliant husband, and a brilliant presenter. So let's think about the people who are listening to this. A lot of people involved with sales, right? So kind of people go, you know what? If I can get in front of somebody, that's it. I'm always going to close them. Well, focus on being a brilliant prospector then. Get the introductions. If you can get in front of people and you can always close, wonderful. Other people, I'm really good at getting through the door. I just never seem to get the deal. I walk out and they're asking me for a proposal. Well, can you do a proposal and we'll have a look at it? Which is basically another way of saying no a lot of times. So what about being so brilliant at that face-to-face? Learning how to ask the right questions, listening to some of your other podcasts. I mean, some of the stuff that you've got, Will, as a resource for people to listen to. You can just search and kind of go, I want to know how to ask the right questions. I want to know how to prospect. I want to know how to do a 15-minute presentation. I want to know how to create a brilliant elevator pitch. I want to know how to, all that stuff's there. You just got to want to focus on it.
So am I right in then saying that we should find what we're good at naturally and then juxtapose what would have the biggest impact on us and then learn to be brilliant at those things?
You've said it better than me, Will. Yes. That's perfect. That's great.
Because
that's going in my next book.
I think that's quite counterintuitive. I think a lot of people, talent, there's lots of study and science on talent and whether people are born talented. Clearly, if you want to play in the NBA, you've got to be 7 foot tall. That's something that's not all the time, but most of the time is uncontrollable by the average person. Maybe you can stick wooden plats at the bottom of your shoes and get somewhere towards it, but maybe not. And there's lots of science about talent. It tends to be people will get some kind of positive reinforcement about something at the beginning, early years of their life, rightly or wrongly. And then they double down on it. And then suddenly at 16, 18, especially in the sports world, they're now talented. So how much of all this then is, if we're just proposing what we're naturally good at versus what will have the biggest impact long term if we double down on it, how do we suss out what we are naturally talented at versus what we've become somewhat brilliant at, if that makes sense?
Yeah, ask other people.
Sure.
Ask other people what they think you're really good at, and they'll tell you. And you might be surprised sometimes at what people say. So, for example, I don't believe that everybody could be a brilliant presenter because we're wired differently. And you've got to have an ego to want to be a brilliant presenter. You've got to learn then how not to show the ego. But at the end of the day, most people who are presenters, they enjoy standing on stage and at the end, having 500 people give them a round of applause. There's nothing quite like that. But a lot of people are terrified by that.
Sure.
And they're so terrified by that, they would go on stage and they wouldn't actually enjoy the process. Even learning it, they wouldn't enjoy it. And even if they got there, they wouldn't enjoy it. So, don't bother with that. What's going to be your thing that you want to do? And you're right, if you've got a bit of natural talent, it's much easier to develop that into brilliance than it is to start from scratch and say, okay, I want to be a brilliant chef. That's so out of my reach. My wife could, because she's really, really great at cooking now. And if she wanted to be a brilliant chef, she could go and learn from some other chefs and great teachers and be a brilliant chef. I know that because she understands ingredients. She has a little taste of something. Oh, I know what that needs. Whereas I have a little taste of something and say, is it ready to eat now?
Sure. That's my experience with this. You'll see chefs on TV or restaurants, a bit more salt or sugar. It either tastes good or it doesn't. It's binary for me.
Yeah. So I think, it's a really good point. Can you be brilliant at everything? No. You've got to have it in your heart, first of all, you want to. It's got to be a must, not a should. Sure. If it's a shouldism, forget it. It's got to be a must. And then after that, focus maybe on just 3 things.
Okay, so I want to get practical in a second of how we achieve brilliance. But just final thing on this, just to tee up the rest of the conversation, Michael. For anyone who's listening now, who's totally sold on the idea, they're kind of sussing out what they want to double down on, and they've got even an inkling at the back of the mind, and or maybe it's a gut feeling of what they should be doing. Should we be realistic with our goals of brilliance, or should we be more open-ended and even stretch these goals beyond what we think we're capable of right now?
I mean, it's the classic question around goal setting, isn't it? Do you set achievable goals, smart goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, or timed, or do you set big, hairy goals that seem impossible? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that when you wake up, if your goal excites you enough to want to get out of bed and get on with it, great. If it doesn't, find another one. So if your goal is about doing something just so you can please somebody else, sure, or just so you get to that next rung in the ladder, which then may mean you do something, but it's a drag, that's not a goal. That's a task. So I love it when I get the bit between my teeth and I want to do something. I want to create something. And this has been, last year was the year of pivoting. This is the year of, it has to be the year of opportunity. For because, sure, this is a whole new way of working and a whole new way of living. And some people are going to be brilliant at it. Some people will be. I've seen it already. You'll have seen it already. It's like, in the past, this idea of going on screen and broadcasting, sending people a video message, that type of stuff. Who would have done that? Now you have to do that. So you might as well learn at least how to be good at that, with this new way of doing stuff, and then maybe later on become brilliant at it, because that's a must, an absolute must, not a should. So I think it's a case of getting that balance between the excitement level, but then also you've got to get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
It seems like we're trying to avoid this grey area when we're setting what we want to become brilliant at. In that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, there's a grey area where we want to get a promotion at work. Who really gives a shit, right? There's other things that we could be doing. We could be asking better questions of what could I do instead of getting a promotion that would get me all the benefits of having a promotion. There's this grey area in the middle. Now, either side of it, for your speaking example, it could be that you one of your things to become brilliant at inadvertently or directly is to serve a ton of people or to serve a few people on a much higher level. Or it seems on the other far end of the grey area in between, we could just have a real selfish goal, like just learning to be great at an instrument. It doesn't really serve anyone else, but we could really get a lot of it. So is that how we should be setting up our goals? So we're not focusing on the middle, that bit that's all a bit messy, and you may be being influenced by other people. You may be having societal pressures or social norms choose what you want to be brilliant at. Is it fair to say that we should be aiming for, I guess, either serving people or just being really selfish?
I think it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Do you know what? It's that I've recently joined Clubhouse.
You are literally right. I've done at least 7 or 8 podcasts this week. At least 4 or 5 of them I've been banging on about Clubhouse.
Right.
There is something going on here. This is clearly going to explode over the next few months.
If I hear one more person going, all I want to do in 2021 is serve more people. If I can serve more people, and I just want to serve more people, and all you've got to do for me to serve you is to join my list, and I will send you this. I'm like, fuck. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, it's too late now, isn't it?
I didn't say it. I didn't swear.
No, I'm joking. It's fine.
But that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, F off, man. With this saying that I just want to serve more people. It's become a thing where, it's not a thing anymore. It's like one of those words that's been used, and I think it's been exploited to a point of, what do you really want? Sure. Hey, we're all selfish. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Serving other people isn't right there at the top. Yeah, so get your needs in the right order first. Look after yourself, not in a selfish way, but look after yourself. Be the best version of you. We do a program called Hearts and Minds. And it's a customer service program and a personal development program. And the reason we do the two things together, hearts is for our customers. We love our customers. Minds is for ourselves. And my argument is this: you cannot be better for your customer unless you're better for yourself first. Just saying to somebody, hey, have a nice day, when inside you're feeling like shit, forget that. You know what? But buy my product because it's really, really great, but I don't really believe in it myself. Can you tell? Yeah, of course you can tell. You know what? I'd rather be doing this than something else, but I'm turned up, or I'm having a conversation with you now. I'm not really here. I'm not really present. You know, forget that. And that's what this sometimes with this serving thing becomes. So it's not being selfish. It's just working on yourself first. And if that involves learning to play the lute, because you've always wanted to learn how to play the lute, then get your lute out and enjoy it. And
That's a very specific example. Is that something that you enjoy playing yourself?
Why I thought of a lute.
That's hilarious. I would. So if I
was to look around and see a picture of a lute somewhere, but there was not a single reference to a lute in my office.
Well, there you go. That's your gut. That's your subconscious pulling on something. Maybe as a child, there was some desire there, right?
Do you think I should be learning how to play the lute?
To be honest, I don't really know what a lute is.
Well, it's that funny. It's like a big bowed guitar thing, isn't it? But they played them in the medieval times.
Sure, I understand.
And like minstrels would have them, wouldn't they? They'd go, I once was a minstrel who wandered this way, ring, and that's the lute.
Well, I think you're halfway there. You just need a ridiculous outfit now.
We're talking lute with Will and Michael.
Lutin, the Lutin podcast. Right, okay, let's bring it back down to some semblance of normality here for a second. Let's say we now, and I agree, I 100% agree with everything you just said. I'll just say that, 100% agree. And a lot of sales training that forced me to create the Salesman Podcast, salesman.org, everything that we do, was based around this idea of, let's look at the principles of influence. Let's look how we can manipulate people. Let's look how we can use and say weird things on the phone to get people to commit, even if after the fact they feel a little bit weird about it. You don't have to do any of that stuff if you feel confident in yourself, if you enjoy your product. All that stuff is done organically and naturally. So that's one of the reasons why I started all of this. So I 100% agree. I'm on board with what you're saying there, that it's fine to be selfish because that makes you a better person that can inadvertently add more value to people after the fact. But let's get back to this. Let's get practical for a second. Let's say we've the audience now, they've uncovered this one thing. They really want to play the lute for whatever reason. What's the first step to becoming brilliant at it? Because clearly it's one thing to say that's what you should be doing, and it's another thing to say, come back in 10 years when you've mastered it and you are recognized as being brilliant.
Yeah, number one, find a lute player who can teach you. Get a coach. This is the hidden. Well, it's not even hidden anymore. Everybody knows it. Like I could spend hours and hours and hours trying to learn how to play the lute, or I could buy a How to Play the Lute in 6 Weeks book, and I'll be better. Mm-hmm. I could get a coach. I could go online and watch some lute lessons. I'll become better even faster. I've got my book now. I've got my lute lessons. And then I employ lute coach. And lute coach comes along and sits down with me for an hour, or Zooms or Skypes with me for an hour. And at the end of that, I'm even better again. That's really the most obvious way. Second thing would be to say, why? Why am I learning to play the lute? What's my why? Why am I doing this? Because if it's because my mum's always wanting me to play the lute, or everybody else at work plays the lute and I'm the only person who doesn't play the lute, so I'd better learn how to do it.
That's an odd organization to work for.
Yeah, well, World of Lutes. Lutes are us. What, you don't play the lute? Oh my goodness. You're not going to go anywhere in this organization.
But they're singing it as they're telling you off.
Absolutely. I should have spotted it in the interview when the whole interview panel had lutes. But anyway, look, the point is that you've got, obviously you're going to want to do it for you, but then find other people who can help you. And invest in it a little bit. The best money I ever have spent in my life has been with coaches, because you get a good coach and they stretch you, and they absolutely transform the way that you think. And at the end of that each coaching session, you should be thinking, wow, oh my goodness, that was amazing. That was extraordinary. And when you find somebody who can coach you like that, it's beautiful.
You're adding a bit of colour here to a question asked earlier on about how do we know whether becoming brilliant is, whether we are actually brilliant, because we're making these definitions from our own worldview, belief system, and the context of where we are right now. But a coach is going to be, it doesn't matter if they're 10, 20, 50 years ahead of you, but they're going to know what brilliance really is. And so they're going to be able to, as you said, stretch even your imagination here a little bit, aren't they?
Or they might not know exactly the skills, but they know how to get your skills out of you. So if you have a look, some of the Olympic coaches couldn't run a mile themselves, but they're brilliant at identifying how somebody can run a mile faster. So sometimes it's that they just know how to tap in, and they can ask you I'll give you an example. My very first proper coach that I paid a lot of money for was a guy called Peter Field. And I used to weigh quite a bit more than I weigh now. It was about 3 stones more than I weigh now. And I would kind of hide it and put it off. And I'm still a bit overweight now. And after Christmas, I'm definitely a bit overweight now. But I used to kind of hide it and do all sorts of clever things and wear waistcoats on stage and all that type of stuff. But he knew that I didn't like it. And we were doing this thing about what are my goals going to be. And he said, you're not putting a goal down about your weight, Michael. I mean, I thought a bit cheeky. And I went, well, I could maybe do with losing a little bit. And he went, Michael, you definitely need to lose some weight. You know you do. You keep trying to hide it, but that's because you feel uncomfortable about it. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a good coach, by the way, asking you tough questions like that. And I said, yeah. I said, look, I don't know if it's such a strong must at the moment. And he went, okay. He says, you know, when you're walking down the street and you see somebody who's really, really fat, like absolutely huge, and they can only wear jogging bottoms, and their belly's hanging out the bottom of their t-shirt, and you can tell they're a bit smelly, and they're kind of shuffling along with the sides of their shoes all worn down because of the way they shuffle along. I was like, yeah. He goes, that's what thin people think when they look at you.
Some harsh, some tough love there.
I lost 3 stones in the next 6 months. That's tough, but I tell you what, I needed to hear it.
Yeah.
And I needed that example, because I did do that. I'll be very happy to judge other people, but there's me, topping off at 15 stone.
So I won't dwell too long on this, but so I'm a millennial, right? I'm kind of just at the top end of that age range of 34. Do we have less brilliant people now than perhaps what we've had in the past? Because, I'm in this category, right? Because millennials are perhaps a bit softer than other generations, because they've been, they've got participation trophies as opposed to going for the goal. Because at football games, they didn't really count the score, and everyone got a placard for us taking part. Do you think there is a generational gap here between? I'm not saying all millennials are soft, anything but is there more opportunity to become brilliant now, perhaps because less people are going after it than previously?
There's more opportunity now than ever. But look, that thing about this generation, they're softer because I'm 53. My grandma would have told me I was soft when I was growing up. You know what? I got a car at 17 because I saved up to get a car at 17. She couldn't believe that. Got a car at grandma, been saving up for it. Well, I tell you what, that wouldn't have happened. All that type of stuff. It's kind of, we all have our version of it.
Okay.
And I guess Will, when you get to be 60, you'll be looking at these 22-year-olds and saying, look, they got everything done for them. Oh my goodness. Do you know what? Fine. Let them get on. Why not? Why not? people's expectations are higher than ever. Our job, if we're serving people, is that we want to be helping people to fulfill their expectations, whatever they might be. So I don't think it's easier or harder. Some people absolutely get it. I mean, I meet some young people these days, and I am absolutely in awe of what they're doing and what they're achieving and what they're going for. And I meet some others, I look at them and think, you lazy sod. But I think we've always thought that.
Okay, fair enough. So,
brilliance isn't for everybody.
So this is something I was going to ask you. I won't. I had it written down slightly more eloquently than how I'm going to ask it now. But should everyone be aiming for brilliance? Is it okay not to be brilliant at 3 things but be pretty good at 7? Is there a best way? And I guess when I say best, I mean I don't really care about success in the traditional sense of having a big house, car, and stuff. But I do care about being happy. I do care about having, again, not necessarily good work-life balance, but having a great family life, and then enjoying the massive amount of time that I spend in the office or as I do in this business, creating content. So it's massively subjective as to what winning is in this. But should everyone be aiming for brilliance in certain areas of their life, or is it okay not to do that?
The big question is, are you happy? If what you're doing is making you really, really happy, great. Keep doing it. That's fine. If you're sat there thinking, you know what, I'm dissatisfied. I am bored, sick of just watching Netflix, binge watching this, doing that, working for somebody else's dime and not really achieving everything I could. I see other people doing stuff and I think, oh, I would like a bit of that. Mm-hmm. That's when you need to do something about it. So that's the big question to ask yourself. Are you happy? Are you really happy? And if not, do something about it. If you are, keep doing what you're doing.
Cool. Okay, I've got one final question on coaches, then we'll wrap up with the final question I ask everyone that comes on the show, Michael. Now, I don't know if it's just sales training, and I don't know if this is applicable across the board for other industries. There's a lot of shit sales trainers. There's a lot of shit sales coaches. There's a lot of sales people who had success and then try to do coaching, whether they are unhappy in the sales role and they want to do something different. Great, more power to them, but they're not great coaches. I do a lot of training, but I don't necessarily coach people directly. So I'm trying to keep myself out of this conversation, out of this race here that I'm describing. But how do we know when someone? Or let me ask a different question. Other than the obvious things like good testimonials and seeing people have results from the individual, are there any other telltale signs of a good or a bad coach?
Well, that's a great question. See, I coach a handful of people every year. And so, because I'm not a brilliant coach, that's not one of the things I want to be brilliant at. But a lot of people say I'm a brilliant coach. And I think it's because I don't use normal coaching technique. So the classic thing with a coach would be, during your first session, let's find out what you want. And then I would ask you, if I was a real coach, I would ask you loads of questions to help you have your moment of discovery. So that suddenly Will goes, I've got it. I need to do this. And we might have taken 2 months to get there. And even though I, as the coach, might know the answer, I want you to discover it. I don't do that. My method of coaching is, well, if we had a magic wand and we could go to 3 months from now, and anything that you would really, really want would have happened, what would it be? You don't have to do any work towards it. It's just happened because I've got a magic wand. Then you describe how it is, and I'll say, okay, here's a bunch of tools. Try this, do that, test that, use this, do that, and let's start right now. So I'm quite fortunate that I've had a chance to coach some well-known people who promote me as a coach. And probably the most famous one for listeners in the UK is a lady called Davina McCall. So Davina's, and I guess this goes out all over the world, but you can imagine, kind of just take your most well-known female television presenter from your country, and that's the equivalent of our Davina McCall. So Davina, I did a coaching session with her, and she was terrified because she said, look, I know what I need to do. I need to leave my management and go somewhere else and do something else. And she was hosting a show at the time called Big Brother, which has been all over the world. And she wanted to leave Big Brother, but her manager was saying, you cannot do that. You cannot do it. You're so well known for it, you have to. And she goes, well, that's why I need to leave it. And I said, you don't need to leave Big Brother. You need to leave your manager. And she was like, yeah, no, but how do I do that? So I said, well, first of all, you need to find another manager that you're going to go to. If you could have anybody in the world as your manager, who would it be? And she said the name of the person who she wanted to have as her manager. And I said, right, let's ring him now. And she was like, I can't ring him now. I said, why not?
I love it.
You're Davina McCall, let's ring him now.
Yeah.
She went, oh, shit. She said, well, I haven't got his number. I said, well, we'll look it up on the Google. So I looked up his office, and she rang up and she went, hi, it's Davina McCall here. I would like to talk to, and I'm not going to say his name because it's an important reason why not in the moment. And they went, oh, he's not here. He's in LA at the moment, but we'll pass on the message. It's like, great, thanks very much. She put the phone and she was like, oh, shit. Oh, my goodness, what have I done? Literally 3 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was like, oh, my goodness, a number she doesn't recognize. She said, what do I do? I said, answer it. I bet it's him. She answered it. It was like, hi. Oh, hi, yeah. I just left a message at the office. He says, yeah, and I rang you straight away. I want to meet with you. So she, within 7 days, he came back to the UK. They had the meeting, and he said, I shouldn't be your manager. Here's why, but I know who should be your manager, and here's what you need to do. She went to this other manager. He did all the difficult, messy stuff of getting out a Big Brother and redoing deals and all that type of things, and had the fight with her manager. And then she moved on to another management company. She joined the biggest management company in the world, who do Philip Schofield and Ant and Deck and all those other people. And when you talk to Davina now, she goes, that 1 hour, that first hour that we were together, completely changed my life. And she said, and I know for a fact, if we had just had that session and then we'd left and you'd said to me, right, get on with it and let me know, I never would have made that call and my life never would have changed. So I think that's what a good coach is doing. They are holding you accountable, but with massive action. Not, here's something to do in a few weeks or whatever. In a coaching session, if I say to somebody, I'll introduce you to such and such, I do it there and then. Let's ring them now. Let's do an email to them now. Here's what it's going to say. Type it all up, send it off, introduce them. And that does two things. One, it shows them the sense of urgency. Secondly, it means when I finish the coaching session, I'm finished. I don't have anything else to do, which I quite like. So that was a long answer, Will. My apologies.
So let me just redefine this coaching role, because this is something I probably need as well. We can talk about it another time off air, perhaps. But we've got a bunch of things happening with our business right now where we've just been given a load of funding on different projects. Do we need a coach then that, as you've just described, we sit down in a room with them or over a Zoom call, whatever it is, and it's one-on-one. They are multiple steps ahead of us in the game, and they have helped other people, similar people in the past. Or, and I'm framing this up in a sales context because this is what that's seemingly what I feel like we need here if we're taking this serious. Or is it possible to have results with what happens a lot in the sales training industry, where you're kind of in a group and then there's messages and maybe you get on a call every now and again? Is that enough to achieve brilliance, or do we really need a legit, there for us, one-on-one coach?
You know the answer to this. You've asked a completely rhetorical question just by the.
I know the answer, but I want it to come from you.
But obviously, something one-to-one is always going to be better.
Yeah,
it has to be, because it's the familiarity and it's that being able to challenge somebody. You build trust. If you're in a group, especially salespeople, a lot of salespeople sat in a room with a sales trainer. Nobody's going to put their hands up and go, I really shit myself when I have to ring somebody for the second time and they've told me not to ring back. Or I feel really bad about this. How do I get over that? I don't know where to start. Whereas if you've got a one-to-one coach and especially if you've got to scale with something and you can say, I'm frightened, help me, and you've got somebody in your corner who's going to be there fighting for you, one-to-one's always going to be better. Good. Yeah, of course. It's one thing for me to say. It's another thing for an expert like yourself to say it. Michael, I've got one final question to ask everyone that comes on the show, so I'll throw this at you now, and then you can tell us where we can find out more about you in a second. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling? I would say ask for the deal much earlier than you think you need to. Like somebody once said to me, right, what you need more than anything is a structured sales approach. And we learned from this guy, it's a brilliant system, by the way. I'm not knocking it at all. This structured sales approach. A guy called Tim Price taught me it. And it was these 8 steps. And so you've got to always go through these 8 steps. What I didn't realize was that if somebody rings up and says, hi, can we book you for a keynote on October the 17th? You don't have to do the 8 steps.
Yeah.
Or if somebody rings up and goes, hi, how much is a keynote? They've already bought by ringing you up and asking how much is a keynote. Just say it's X amount. What date are you looking for? Would you like us to schedule you in? That's it. And I used to pussyfoot around all over the place. So I would do that. The other thing I would do is I would learn to ask for a bit more, because I used to be fearful about asking for our rates. So when we do a keynote, it's £5,500 for an hour. And, when the whole thing started, where people started to do stuff online, very, very well-known speakers were dropping their fees to 500 quid. Mm-hmm. I thought, wait a minute, it's the same stuff. It's the same knowledge. It's the same presenter. I'm not going to do that. And I remember Credit Crunch, when everybody started dropping their fees. And the most famous one was, I won't say his name, but he was an Olympic athlete who loves going on stage and saying, you must set goals because we set goals as an Olympic team and here's my medal. And he would hold it up and all that type of stuff. And he was getting £10,000 for a keynote and then Credit Crunch came and he dropped his fee to £800 because his thinking was, I might as well be working. Well, we were like, wait a minute. At that time, we were £4,000 for a keynote. And this is why my wife's brilliant. She said, we're not going to drop our fee because when this is all over, it's going to be difficult to get it back up again. Yep. We're just going to add value. So we kept the fee the same and we added value. So you would get 50 free books and you would get a 90-day follow-up program. And we would do this and we would hang around at lunchtime and do a Q&A or whatever. We were hanging around at lunchtime anyway. We might as well do a Q&A. We would just add value. And then when people came out of Credit Crunch and suddenly this Olympian starts going, all right, I need to put my fees back up. Well, you just paid £800 for you. Well, okay, well, that's what we're going to pay. And he never got his fee back up. It might have gone up to a couple of £1,000, but that was it. Because the word was out. So I think there will be the two things. Always ask for a little bit more. Be confident in your pricing. And assume the sale.
Assume the sale. I love it. Don't take this the wrong way. Fundamental, simple sales advice, but incredibly important, right? It's almost things that can get glossed over. You gloss over them, and you have this complicated 8-step, 15-step, 42-step process. But if you don't do the simple things right, the rest of it just goes up in flames.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's all the cliches. The reason why they're cliches is because they've been said so many times because they're true. People buy from people. Make sure that you're really telling people what the benefits are. Listen more than you talk. All those things. And we know it, but the secret isn't in the knowing. The secret's in the doing. And I say that to people a lot.
Love it. Well, with that, Michael, that's a perfect way to wrap up the show. Tell us where we can find out more about you and where we can find all the books and all the great content as well.
Well, my books are available in all remaining bookshops, or probably Amazon. So if you just search Michael Heppell, the thing we've been talking about today is brilliance, and I have a book called How to Be Brilliant, which is done very, very well. Other books, great book for salespeople is Flip It, which was a Sunday Times No.1 bestseller, really looking at reframing and stuff like that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. And if you would like to connect with me, michaelheppell.com. Heppell is Heppell. If you put Michael Heppell into Google, I should come up first. If I don't, there'll be hell on. It's my name, it's my brand. And we do a thing where we do you log in and you get 90 days worth of free coaching. Not real free coaching. Basically, it's my newsletter and some additional information. I'll be really honest with you. But I tell you one thing, and Will hate me for this, I am rubbish at selling through my newsletter. I just do news. I keep forgetting to sell stuff. I just give people content and keep forgetting to ask for the sale. But that's okay, because we've got a whole bunch of people who love what we share.
Amazing stuff. We'll link to all of that in the show notes over at salesman.org. And Michael, I won't be mad at you, because we've got an email list of 110,000 people, and I've not emailed it in like 3 months. So I am no saint with the email marketing and the email selling either. But with that, mate, genuinely, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure the audience will have as well. And I want to thank you again for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you very much, Will. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed every second of this one. And I have to say, I don't always enjoy every second of recording something for a podcast, but this has been great fun. I've loved it. Thank you.